Story 1. This question is impossible to answer. How would anyone know how often they do not notice free nipples? Story 2. I have had friends who often went without wearing a bra, and I did not think it was a big deal. However, your eyes naturally notice it. Story 3. All I do is stare at people's nipples. There is not a nipple that will not meet my gaze. Story 4. I stopped wearing bras during coronavirus, except for work now since we are back in the office. My friends make comments all the time, so my assumption is very frequent. Story 5. I'm a fan of the sausage, but let me tell you, if a woman's nipples are visible, I will notice every time. Story 6. Always. I don't see how you could not notice. There is a girl where I work who frequently does not wear a bra, and my friend and I always notice. Story 7. Wedding photographer here. I notice a lot, but the clone stamp is a beautiful tool. Story 8. People notice immediately, as it is entirely visible in your peripheral vision. Seriously, you do not even have to break eye contact, and your brain will highlight it intensely. Story 9. Mine always seem to poke through my t-shirts and polos, so I avoid light colors just in case. Story 10. I call it the Rachel Green. Friends fans know what I am talking about. Story 11. Often, I notice it with my own nipples as a man, and I notice it with other people's nipples, whether they are men or women. They stick out in a way that draws your eye, indicating that they are different from the surrounding skin. I am not going to comment on it because, if I had control over my own nipples, I would prefer them to be flat and smooth. However, nature has designed some of us with more prominent nipples. Story 12. This comment section is making me self-conscious as I suffer from constantly hard nipple syndrome. Story 13. Back in my braless days, women would approach me to say they could see through my shirt and would actually get offended when I said that nipples are nothing to be ashamed of. I'm sure men saw too, but at least they never grilled me about it. Story 14. I hardly wear a bra. Nipples poke and pucker. It is what they do. People have eyes. I see men wearing shirts with their nipples showing. Let us braless girls be in peace, please. Especially because summer is coming and bras are very uncomfortable and sweaty. Story 15. Men notice. We do not comment because then women may stop that behavior. Story 16. As a man and amateur bodybuilder, my chest is quite prominent and sticks out. It is almost impossible for my nipples not to show, even in loose clothing. Story 17. Everyone notices, and they are lying if they say they do not. Story 18. It is unusual that everyone talks about female nipples without mentioning male nipples, which are often visible as well. Story 19. I would not know. If I do not notice, I do not notice, but when I notice, I notice. Story 20. When people talk to me without making eye contact, I know there is something wrong. Story 21. I often notice but am never offended. This is an interesting question that touches on both social norms and personal awareness. It would be intriguing to see how much attention people actually pay to this in various situations. What are your thoughts or experiences? Story 22. Without searching, there is probably an entire subreddit dedicated to it. Story 23. This question does not make sense because how would people be aware of the times they did not notice it? Of course, they would think they always notice the times they happen to notice it. Story 24. Men's nipples? Never. Women's? Always. Why is there a difference? Because society says men's nipples are no big deal, but women's nipples must be hidden from the world. Therefore, if you see even a hint of a nipple, it's forbidden fruit to catch a glimpse, even though it is actually no big deal at all. People want what they are not allowed to have. Story 25. 90% of the time, this is the most pointless question I have seen in a while. There is no answer. Story 26. Every time, people notice but choose not to point it out. Story 27. I stopped wearing bras altogether a few years ago and had to come to terms with the fact that everyone likely looks the same, regardless of attraction level. Luckily, no one has commented on it or been disrespectful, which is all I can really ask for. I am not going to get mad at anyone for noticing or admiring, but please do not be inappropriate. Just let me exist and we are fine. Story 28. I visited my girlfriend the other day, and she was wearing a small shirt without a bra. Right away, I could see her nipples through it. It was hard not to look. I asked her why she wasn't wearing a bra and suggested she put one on because there were men in the house, her two sons, aged 33 and 30. Story 29. I have not worn a bra in years. Honestly, if my nipples are of interest to you, then whatever. Story 30. I do not wear bras, but I am also president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Committee and have inverted nipples, so I do not know if a bra is necessary. Story 31. Do I notice? Yes. Is it a big deal? Not really. Does it make teenage males excited? No question, but so does a gentle wind on a sunny day at that age. To a mature adult, it is just normal anatomy. Story 32. All the time, but also because I am short and close to nipple height with a lot of people. Story 33. All the time. If my nipples are showing, I know it, and I know you will look. If your nipples are showing, I am definitely looking. Story 34. Some people have gaydar, I have nipdar. Story 35. Considering my nipple is pierced, I notice people staring a lot. I don't mind though. Story 36. I hold a perfect record of never missing them when they are around. Story 37. I mean, pretty much every time, I guess. But I don't really care. It is the same as seeing a person's eyes for me, just another part of a body. Story 38. I only notice when the nipples are staring at me first, which is always. Story 39. I was driving through town yesterday and saw a woman walking. I noticed that while I was in my vehicle. Story 40. I am a woman and I notice, but I never wear a bra, so I could not care less. Story 41. I notice it every single time. I like breasts and I look at them. Story 42. About 95% of the time, two dots in the middle of a chest are difficult to not notice. Story 43. I think most people notice because it is not really the norm and is only recently becoming accepted. If the trend continues, I think in 10 years most people will not notice at all. Story 44. I rarely wear a bra since the coronavirus pandemic. Usually covered by a cardigan or jacket, but not always. 57 and perky. Story 45. I notice this happens to at least one person once a day. Story 46. Generation X here. We grew up in a completely bra era. I notice and try not to notice every time. Story 47. When are they visible? Like when I can see them. Yes, if I can see them, I notice them. I'm not looking for them. But if suddenly they are there, I can't help but notice them. Story 48. I hate to admit I notice almost immediately. I don't stare and respect the decision to ditch the bra. But god damn it, it will always catch my eye. Story 49. I have an attention to detail that is more of a curse. I focus too much on details. I also feel the need to address small details to people. I notice it most of the time. Luckily, I stay inside for the majority of the year, so I am only telling my family members about their nipples showing through. I would probably get assaulted for pointing it out to a stranger. Story 50. I am not sure exactly, but somewhere around 100% of the time. Story 51. I am not sure many men even know what my face looks like, even though my nipples are not visible. Story 52. I notice them when I notice them. It is hard to say how many times they were visible, but I did not notice them. Story 53. I don't usually notice unless they are pierced. Then they have my full attention. I am usually too concerned about mine being visible. I am a man and they are always hard. Story 54. Those who look can see. It depends on how often people glance at chests, I would say. Story 55. What kind of question is this? How are we supposed to know if we have not noticed? Story 56. You have to nip it. Nip it, nip it, nip it. Nip it in the bud. Barney Fife. Story 57. It depends on how cold it is, I suppose. Also, didn't we just do this about a week ago? Story 58. Married 36 years. I still stare at my wife even though I have not touched her in years. Story 59. Candidly, I would notice attractive women's nipples but likely not anyone else. Story 60. If you want to go without a bra, wear a patterned shirt. It helps to camouflage the bump. Story 61. I once worked with a young woman who did not wear a brassiere and had a pierced nipple. It was difficult not to be inappropriate. Story 62. I noticed that pierced nipples were very common last summer. Story 63. People notice 100% of the time. They actually care nearly 0% of the time. Story 64. I will notice all visible nipples within a 50-yard radius, even in low visibility conditions. Story 65. I do it almost every time. I think it is automatic because we are used to seeing that area smooth, so when it is not, we notice it. Story 66. Wait. It is possible to see people's nipples through their clothing sometimes? No way. I do not believe you. Story 67. We all notice all the time. Who cares? We all know there are nipples in there. Story 68. I wear an unpadded bra because I do not need any extra support and get annoyed how often they show at work because it is so cold. Story 69. On a woman? Always. On a man? Also always. We are creatures of habit, all of us. Story 70. I notice, but I am not going to stare because I am not a creep. It is more of an oh nice. Then I glance away again. Story 71. I am braless due to several scars on my side and chest where a bra wraps around, which become highly irritated by anything tight. Fortunately, I have very small breasts. I am quite skeletal, so you can imagine my overall stick-like physique. I tend to wear camisoles with t-shirts or blouses over them. Most of the time, I don't think. People notice, but if it gets cold enough, there is no way they wouldn't. It doesn't bother me because I really have no alternative, and I am doing the best I can. I am allergic to most adhesives, so pasties would not work either. The people at my work know this and are understanding about it. It has never actually been an issue for me. Story 72. Whatever you do, do not grab them and twist shouting tune in Tokyo. Story 73. Are we discussing the fact that you can see that the person's nipples are erect or a case where you can see the areola clearly through the material? Story 74. I never notice when mine do it and just assume they are like that all the time. Story 75. All the time. I wish I saw more. It is literally the best thing ever, especially when my wife does it. Story 76. Always. I like the look, especially male nipples. Big pectorals, visible nipples, great aesthetic. Story 77. I am not wearing a bra, and I know people notice because I notice all women's breasts. However, that is just a body part one except. Story 78. I am asexual and notice all the time. Not in an attracted way, but like high beams on a highway. Ladies and gentlemen. Story 79. It is usually very obvious, especially if they are wearing white and sweating a lot. Story 80. Very often and quickly. It is usually an immediate eye draw. Even if I try not to be that guy, I notice it at least. That is not too bad, but people will notice. As a man, I have pretty perky nipples that show on my shirts, and people often comment about them. Story 81. I hate to say it, but how do you not notice? Even if you are not paying attention or thinking about it, you have to see it, right? Is it just me? Story 82. Most of the time, I have large nipples that show through any lightweight fabric. I am a man and feel self-conscious about it, so I always notice when others' nipples are visible. It is comforting. I feel like people are really weird about nipples, though. I cannot help that my nipples are so prominent. Sorry, boys. Story 83. As a man with nipples that often show through an undershirt, polo, and sometimes a thin pullover, I am very aware of them. I definitely wear a thicker pullover at work because of this. If I see them, others probably see them too. Story 84. Pretty much always. I do not stare or make a big deal of it, but it is certainly very noticeable. Story 85. I am a man with pierced nipples. They are always visible. Sorry, everyone. Story 86. Never. I never notice ripples. Sometimes I notice a man's ripples, but only because it is unusual to see them showing through a t-shirt. Women do not catch my interest at all. Story 87. As a male-bodied person, I am honestly kind of curious how often people notice mine through t-shirts and stuff since I have mine pierced. Story 88. As a man, my nipples always poke through. I was only called out about it when I was on active duty. I always notice, but much like the sun, I try not to look too much. Story 89. As a straight man, I rarely notice women's nipples but often notice men's. I have a real insecurity about my nipples showing, so I tend to notice it on other men. I do not notice women's nipples, not because I am a great person, but more because I do not want to get caught looking. Story 90. I don't particularly look or care. However, I also go braless the majority of the time, so maybe it's something I am used to seeing on myself and, therefore, on other people as well. Story 91. If you are a female, we have already studied the subject thoroughly. Story 92. I had an ex tell me she can tell when her nipples are hard and poking through. When she talks to guys, she can see their eyes darting. She said she can tell instantly. But then again, she was the type that had really small A-cup breasts but big areola-sized nipples. Story 93. How often do I notice when someone's nipples are visible through their clothing? Every time a visible nipple shows through someone's clothing, I notice. Story 94. I see them when they are obviously sticking out. I would not know if they are not. I am not going to say anything, though. Commenting on it would be weird. Story 95. Immediately, more often than not. Not on purpose, but it always stands out to me. Story 96. I love seeing it. Part of me wants to say, your headlights are on. But anyone under 40 wouldn't get it. Story 97. I honestly do not even know I am staring until I realize she is staring at me. So I wear sunglasses wherever I go. Story 98. How often do you notice the nose on someone's face? The fingers on their hands? If they are visible, they will be seen or noticed. Story 99. Every time I see noses and ears too. What is the big deal? Story 100. I am a man. I have large nipples. People notice and make fun by trying to pinch them. Story 101. I adore not wearing a brassiere. Brassieres are extremely restrictive and uncomfortable, and I just do not see the point when I am only rocking a B-cup. I understand that many women might feel more comfortable in them if they have more out front. Story 102. I will notice all the time. I feel I am average, so some people give more than their best. Story 103. I was sexualized young because of developing early, and it makes me very uncomfortable now to go braless, even though I am older and have a different body and no one cares. Story 104. I think most people notice, but nobody cares. If you get distracted by nipples, then you are immature. Story 105. As a man, I have to be honest and say that men will notice it all the time, and it is genuinely difficult not to look. Personally, I want to be respectful, but nature takes over. Story 106. Male here, worked in a government job with a set uniform, thin shirt, and lots of older women who had the air conditioning set as Arctic all year round. I never noticed any of the women's nipples, but a group of men would joke about needing bandages to keep ourselves in check. Even undershirts could not tame the tiny things. Story 107. In this body-centered world, gay, straight, opposite or same-gendered, nearly every person will notice. Hopefully, no one will say anything, but it is likely. Story 108. I work at a college and I notice, but I am not going to just stare at people because that is rude. Story 109. Well, I just bought a Skims bra with permanent nipples and hope I get noticed. Story 110. My stepdad noticed and asked me to change into a bra. Is that unusual? Story 111. I can spot a hard nipple at 100 yards through a sweater. Story 112. Depending on the person, it is like a laser tracking system detects and locks on them. But that is just something you notice and move on from, usually. Story 113. OnlyFans is not performing well, so you come to Reddit to generate interest? Story 114. I had to have a lumpectomy, and they performed a reduction and lift during the procedure. I swear the headlights are always on now. I need to find ways to avoid peeking all the time. Story 115. One of my biggest turn-ons, and I swear I have extrasensory perception or something. Story 116. At first, I thought people did not notice or care, but nowadays I have realized people look at them more than I thought. Story 117. If you are stressed about others seeing them, I would not let them poke. Story 118. I think my brain has some kind of radar because I glance around and notice them everywhere I look. If it is possible to notice them, I am probably 99% going to notice them. If they are attached to an attractive woman, then I will notice them as often as possible. Story 119. Aren't we a bit beyond this? I would find it much stranger if someone did not have nipples. Story 120. Not often, unless a person is wearing a slim fit or loose shirt and has long nipples. Story 121. I am short, so I notice every time. Also, mine get hard in the slightest breeze, so it is what it is. I do not judge. Story 122. I do not know and I do not care because my nipples are always at full mast no matter what shirt I am wearing. Story 123. I may notice a woman's nipples, but I keep my head lowered and act as though I'm not looking at her. I steal the occasional glance, but I am more interested in a woman's butt. So much so that I could almost climax just from looking at it. It is sexist and politically incorrect, but no one ever knows because I keep it to myself and do not do anything embarrassing. Often, I start a conversation with a woman without letting her know I find her very attractive. I usually do not tell someone I find them attractive for a long time. I want our friendship to be on solid ground when I let her know she is attractive and that I like her figure. I want her to be comfortable and not likely to get angry. Story 124. I think people will notice, but it does not mean it is okay to stare or make a comment. Story 125. I almost always notice because I wonder if they are not embarrassed. It's a normal thing to happen, but still, I would not want my nipples to be hard around people. Story 126. I often notice nipples in my peripheral vision. I do not stare, but they are usually quite noticeable. Most people will never mention or stare at them. Story 127. I can see men's nipples when they wear a thin white shirt. I can see the outline of their beer belly. Story 128. How can you answer this? I notice when a person is wearing thin white cotton, but this year's fashion color is light green. I can't count the ones I don't see. Like that joke. Therapist. Does your brother talk to himself when he's alone? Me, I don't know. I'm never with him when he's alone. A better question would be, it's spring. Nice weather out. What percentage of people this week have you seen their nipples through their clothing? Story 129. Every time. Q's Men's Warehouse guy. I guarantee it. Story 130. I notice, but it just makes me feel less insecure about myself. Story 131. Everyone all the time. Most people are polite enough to avert their gaze. Story 132. I am not searching for it, but it is hard to miss, so I usually notice it right away. Story 133. I am a man with perky nipples, and I never have any idea until I see myself in a mirror. Then I shrug and laugh. Story 134. My nipples are very pointy. My best friend forever calls them my high beams. We live in a Christian home, so I have to wear nipple covers to avoid offending anyone. Story 135. I truly believe any woman should wear whatever makes her happy and comfortable, as long as bodily fluids are absorbed before sitting on shared seats. However, I confess I find it difficult not to notice the pointy nipples of people without bras. It can be distracting, and for some reason my eyes keep wanting to glance. A colleague on my team is lovely and sweet and does not wear a bra under very thin shirts. It is none of my business. I try hard not to look, but my brain perceives hard nipples as a distraction that I feel compelled to address. Story 136. The human eye can distinguish 60 Hz, so that means I notice your nipples 60 times per second. Story 137. I own a business that participates in many festivals and fairs. Ladies, your nipples can be seen. It is not attractive. Also, feed your baby or pump, your shirt is wet. Story 138. My data might be biased because I was unaware of certain observations. Story 139. Would you notice if a man had an erection through his clothes? The answer is always yes. Story 140. Always. but I always remind myself that their eyes are up here. Story 141. What methodology could you use to answer this question? I cannot think of any way to measure the frequency to come up with a reliable answer. Would you use eye tracking video or what? Would you test it at business meetings, wet t-shirt contests, or other situations? Story 142. Often for me, but I do not react in any type of way, externally at least. Story 143. I just went to Walmart and sampled the first 100 people who walked out the door to see whether their nipples were visible. I found 16%. Story 144. Mine are always visible. It's a curse. Think Rachel in Friends. So if I notice, others do too. I'm a middle school teacher and now have tools to hide them. Story 145. If they are visible, I notice. I do not stare or comment, but it is not much different from seeing a button undone on someone's shirt. It is pretty obvious. Story 146. Not necessarily a sexual look. It is just when something is kind of taboo in this society you cannot help but notice. For example, if someone was walking around in thin pants with a noticeable erection, everyone would notice even if they are not attracted to men. Story 147. Easy to spot. Unless my eyes are glued to my phone. I just hope it is not an eyesore to see. As for frequency, the correct word may be probability. So the probability is high if such a person directly crosses my path in a properly illuminated setting. Story 148. The answer is obvious every time. I have always noticed, especially if it is borderline see-through, then I try to avert my eyes but not completely. Story 149. I think I always notice, but that does not mean I care. We all have nipples. They are a normal part of the human body. Story 150. Frankly, it has become so common here that I basically do not even notice anymore. Story 151. I do not notice because I do not make it a habit of staring at girls' chests when talking to them. It sends the wrong message. Story 152. I have not worn a bra ever since I got my nipples pierced. Even though I sometimes advocate for my nipples, no one has had the courage to point them out to me, so I have no idea. I personally would find it hilarious if someone took offense over them. Story 153. All the time. Female nipples, male nipples, I see all the nipples. Story 154. Probably always. If he is built and in shape, it is impossible to ignore and not appreciate. If it is less so, it is still hard not to notice people pointing at you. Story 155. If it is visible, then it will be noticed even though they do not say anything. Story 156. The Federal Bureau of Investigation will take note every time, also known as those people who wear shirts with the phrase female body inspector. Story 157. There is a story about nipple perks, a product that women can wear under their clothes to mimic erect nipples. A group of middle-aged women tested the prototypes on a trip to Las Vegas. They were amazed that they received much more attention than younger women. Story 158. If the person likes breasts, every time. If not, just now and then. Story 159. I have them and I know people stare. Sometimes, I point them in different directions to confuse people. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.